Welcome back to The Nation. Well, you heard Peter Dunn's comments on that Employment Relations Amendment Bill. He said he won't support it. The bill, sponsored by National MP Jami-Lee Ross, would allow employers to break a strike using volunteers or contractors, and that's been drawn from the ballot. Predictably, the unions are dead against it, but there's also opposition from some employers who say it could jeopardise 10 years of harmonious workplace relations. Jami-Lee Ross joins us now. Good morning, Mr. Ross. Thank you for joining us this morning. Why do we need this bill?
It's important that we have a fair and flexible employment relations framework, and I think it's important also that we balance the rights of both employees and employers. And if willing workers want to go and work during a strike, I think they should be allowed to. That would allow them the freedom to choose that. Currently, the law doesn't allow them to do that.
Do the Employers and Manufacturers Associations support it?
If you read the Employers and Manufacturers Association's press release, they said it's worthy of discussion.
I don't think they support it though, do they? Which is quite interesting.
Well, actually, I've been talking to them and other employer organisations. They've indicated that, in general, they support the principle. There are some areas that they'd probably like to see some work done on. An example could be lockouts. They certainly have indicated to me they support the right of employers and employees to have temporary workers during a strike, but perhaps with lockouts we should reconsider that. I'm happy to look at that in select committee.
They're yet to publicly come out, though, and say that they'll support it, aren't they?
They said that the principle is worthy of debate. Yes, there'll be some opposition to it, but it's important that we have this discussion. I'm really keen to have the discussion through a select committee. That's where New Zealanders can have a say on this.
OK, does the New Zealand Initiative support it?
The New Zealand Initiative?
Yeah.
Look, they'll probably make a submission to a select committee when the time comes.
It's my understanding they sort of suggest that the bill is trying to fix something that essentially isn't broken yet.
Well, I think, Rachel, you need to look at New Zealand's history with strikes. It wasn't that long ago. We were actually having an average of one strike a week. That's quite a lot.
Really?
Yes, that's right. In 2005, we were seeing an average of one strike a week. In 2000, the number of strikes was actually quite low. Once Labour's Employment Relations Act came into force, the number of strikes actually increased. And there's the potential, once the economy really picks up again, that we could start seeing a whole lot more strikes. What's important is that New Zealanders who are working in organisations, New Zealanders who wish to go and work during a strike, have the freedom to be able to choose to do that if they want to.
The bill, it doesn't have the support of Peter Dunn, it doesn't have the support of Mana, of Labour, the Māori Party, so who does support it?
Well, the National Party does and the ACT Party does, and I'll be supporting us. I'll be talking to other parties in the Parliament. I'm not going to count my chickens until they hatch. I think it's wrong for opposition parties just to assume all of the parties that aren't in government will be opposed to it. It's important, though, that we have the debate during a first reading, get it to a select committee so New Zealanders can have a say.
If the party supports it, if National supports it, why isn't it then a government bill?
Well, the government can only do so much. The government actually looks to backbenchers to work on ideas that backbenchers and the party thinks is important. The National Party in a conference recently had quite a good debate about this and overwhelmingly supported it. The Prime Minister's also said that he supports it and will be supporting it at a first reading.
Where does this bill have its origins?
This bill has its origins in the right for New Zealanders to choose for themselves if they want to go and work. Or is it on the wharfs
of the Ports of Auckland? Is that where its origins lie?
Well, the Prime Minister actually highlighted that as a really good example of how a drawn-out strike can have quite a big impact on the wider economy. If you look at the Ports of Auckland, about $27 billion of imports and exports goes through that port. There are hundreds of thousands of New Zealanders that are impacted when there are issues down on the ports. But in general, I think New Zealanders should be able to choose. And the people who are actually affected...
Have you discussed this bill with the Ports of Auckland? Have you discussed it with them?
The people who are affected the most during a strike are the lowest paid workers. They're the ones who need to take a pay packet home.
Have you discussed this bill with the Ports of Auckland?
A long time ago, that was an issue that was raised. Oh, it might have been when the industrial dispute was in full swing, but I've discussed this with a number of employer organisations, discussed this with a number of people who've had experiences with the strikes, and they've indicated...
What was the Port's input into the bill?
The Ports indicated that during a strike, like every organisation that is affected by a strike, they're unable to keep their business going in the same manner that they're able to before. That has a big impact on the economy.
So they support it. Ports of Auckland support it.
It has a bigger impact on the people that are employed and are the workers down there.
And they've indicated they would support this bill?
They haven't indicated since it's been drawn what they'll do. I haven't spoken to the Chief Executive about that at all.
Last month, we spoke to John Key, and he spoke about that within the National Party, you know, there were those who were on the left, there were those who were in the centre, where he positioned himself, and those on the right. Where would you position yourself within National?
National's a broad church party. I'm a centre-right politician.
That's exactly what the Prime Minister says.
I'm a centre-right politician. I'm supportive of the National Party's vision and values. We want to see more fairness, more flexibility in the employment relations framework, and this will help to do that.
All right, Jami-Lee Ross, thank you. Appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you.
I'm going to bring in the Labor Party's Labor spokesperson, Darien Fenton now. Good morning, Darien. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Morning.
What do you make of this bill?
Well, this bill is an extreme bill. It's going to encourage bad employers and it's going to help entrench low wages in New Zealand. When you put it together with the other changes the government is planning to make around employment relations, I think this is very sinister and people need to be very worried about it.
OK, but then let's look at the situation at Ports of Auckland, because innocent parties were hurt by what went on there. We had retailers who just could not get vast amounts of stock into that port, and it's still going on. Isn't that why you perhaps need a bill like this?
Well, let's be clear about the Ports of Auckland. It was actually a lockout. And that's one of the really extreme things about this bill, where an employer can make demands. And in the Ports of Auckland's case, they were wanting to contract out the workers. They locked them out. And under this bill, they could lock them out, replace them with temporary and lower paid workers and force the workers to agree.
Is there the potential for a bill like this on essential industry, though? So perhaps in a situation where you've got a port, perhaps in a situation, say, with air traffic controllers, where it's essential to the running of a country, that you could apply legislation like this?
I think we need to be real about the strike situation in New Zealand. There was only 12 the last time it was measured a couple of years ago, so we're not a strike-happy country. It's quite difficult for workers in essential industries to take strike action. They have to give notice, they have to go through a mediation process, it has to be notified to the Department of Labour. So there are protections in place, and it's also important to understand that Section 97 that Jami-Lee wants to remove actually does allow non-union workers who agree to do the work of striking workers.
Is Labour's view that the trade unions are always right?
No, of course not. Of course, we have close relationships. That's where Labour came from. We were formed from the industrial arm of the Labour movement. But yes, we have some robust discussions with the union movement, but we also have robust discussions with business as well.
The situation at the Ports of Auckland, of course, this is an old style, you know, union, isn't it? This is the wharfies. This is pretty hardcore. Are you comfortable with the association?
Absolutely comfortable with it. Look, what those workers were fighting was casualisation of their jobs, and most Aucklanders actually understood that. And when they got that, understood that, they got on board and were on the side of the wharfies. And in fact, so were some businesses in Auckland. What they were saying is we need a new style of management, a new style of managing the port, not this divisive approach that we've seen in the last 18 months, which has been led as much by the Ports of Auckland as by the workers.
So what would you do to fix it? What are you doing to fix the situation? Because it's dragging on, isn't it?
With the Ports of Auckland, well, we're in opposition, so we don't have an awful lot of say. One of the things I did try and do was bring some accountability to the Ports of Auckland through a members' bill, which Jami-Lee's party didn't approve, so it didn't get to select committee for discussion. But that would have opened up information, so people, the public who own the port, could have got more information about what was really going on there.
Do you regard the Ports of Auckland as a bad employer?
I think they've done some things in this dispute that are reprehensible, and that's been discussed. They've leaked personal information. They did replace.
Allegedly. They dispute that.
Well, and they did replace locked out workers as well, and we're fined $40,000 for that. Well, I've had a discussion with the Ports of Auckland. We've been down and met with them. They tell me that they're working hard to repair the relationships. They've got a way to go. Everybody has to work hard at that.
All right, Darien Fenton, Labour's spokesperson for Industrial Relations. Thank you.